At 2:30 in the morning, my grandson collapsed at my doorstep. His jaw was swollen and his nose was bleeding. Choking on tears, he told me, "My wife beat me because of her lover." I held him without words. I guided him inside, and silently, I put on my lawyer's suit. Ready, I gathered my documents. Then I called my private investigator. Execute the plan immediately. I'm grateful you're here. If you're watching this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments what country you're listening to my justice story from. I want to know how far this message has traveled. I had just finished reading the newspaper and settled into my recliner, my reading glasses slipping down my nose. After a long, draining day at the law firm, being a defense attorney in this city wasn't always about dramatic courtroom battles. But that day I had been preparing a corporate fraud case and reviewing depositions until the wee hours. My bones ached. I just wanted to rest peacefully. Outside in the alley, the howling of stray cats mixed with the rumble of delivery trucks making their late-night rounds. It was already 2:30 in the morning, but the city refused to quiet down. I figured the night shift workers were at the 24-hour diner down the block, chatting over coffee and cigarettes like every night. I assumed. I closed my eyes, trying to tune out the sounds so my mind could settle. Suddenly, frantic pounding erupted at the door, so violent it made me jolt upright. My heart hammered, and my attorney instincts kicked in instantly. Who could be banging like that at this ungodly hour? I walked briskly to the entrance, clutching my reading glasses tightly just in case. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice slightly unsteady, not from fear, but because I sensed something terrible was unfolding. No response came. Just a few more knocks, weaker this time, followed by a strangled, shaking voice. "Grandma, please open up." I nearly went rigid. It was the voice of Marcus, my grandson. I fumbled with the locks in my haste, my heart racing in my chest. The moment I pulled the door open, Marcus crumpled into my arms, trembling like a wounded creature. I caught him tightly, feeling his limp frame as if every ounce of strength had been drained from him. "Marcus, what happened to you, sweetheart?" I asked, my voice cracking. The yellow porch light illuminated his face, and I was paralyzed by what I saw. His nose was caked with dried blood, his right jaw swollen and discolored, barely able to move. He was clutching his ribs with both hands, as if trying to contain unbearable pain. "My wife, she attacked me because of her lover," Marcus whispered hoarsely, before dissolving into gut-wrenching sobs. I felt my blood surge with fury, yet simultaneously, my heart shattered. My grandson, the boy I had raised after his parents passed, the one I loved more than my own existence, stood before me, destroyed. I helped him inside. I eased him onto the couch and rushed to the bathroom for a wet towel and the medical supplies. "Stay still, darling. Let me examine you," I said, fighting to maintain composure, though internally I was falling apart. I gently cleaned the blood from his nose, but it continued seeping dark and raw, as if each drop was slicing through my own heart. The gash was severe. It wasn't merely a surface injury. It seemed to carry a far deeper devastation. Marcus kept gripping his ribs, his slender hands quivering. Cautiously, I moved his hands aside. I lifted his shirt, and dear God, I nearly released the towel. A massive bruise, purple and black, spread across his ribcage, as if he had been struck not once, but repeatedly, mercilessly. I felt like I couldn't draw breath, as if I myself had absorbed the blows. "Marcus, who did this to you?" "It was Monica, wasn't it?" I asked, my voice trembling with rage and anguish. Marcus didn't respond. He simply wept, and his cries shattered the stillness of the apartment. Without hesitation, I grabbed the phone and dialed the number I knew by memory, the city's urgent care clinic. "Dr. Chen, please prepare a room. I'm bringing my grandson in," I said urgently. My car was at the mechanic, getting the transmission repaired, so I called a rideshare service. While we waited, I sat beside Marcus. I draped a blanket over him so he wouldn't catch cold. His cell phone, which he'd left on the coffee table, wouldn't stop illuminating. From the corner of my vision, I noticed 9 missed calls from Monica and several messages appearing on the locked screen. "Keep your mouth shut if you want to keep the house." I felt the fury rush to my temples. I reached out to grab the phone. I wanted to read more, to understand what else she had inflicted upon him. But Marcus, though weakened, snatched it from me in alarm. "Grandma, don't look. It's nothing." She stared at me with eyes brimming with terror, as if merely touching that device would cause everything to crumble. I didn't push him. I simply squeezed his hand to soothe him. I'm here, darling. Nothing will harm you. But internally, I understood this had already escalated far beyond acceptable limits. When the rideshare arrived, I helped Marcus climb in, supporting him with one arm while awkwardly managing a bag with the other. During the journey to the clinic, Marcus was hunched forward, his head resting on my shoulder, repeating continuously, "Forgive me, Grandma. I didn't want to disturb you at this hour, but I couldn't endure it anymore. I had to escape here." Every word he uttered was like a blade through my heart. I was his grandmother. I had vowed to shield him throughout his entire life, and now he'd been forced to seek me out in the dead of night, broken by the woman I had once welcomed into our family. The rideshare stopped outside the clinic where the harsh white glow of a neon sign illuminated the words urgent care. I assisted Marcus in exiting my grandson who could scarcely stand. His body was still quaking, and he was clutching his ribs as if clinging to his final reserve of endurance. I clasped his hand, attempting to conceal how my own heart was thundering. "I'm here. Don't be frightened," I murmured, though I was terrified as well. Dr. Raymond Chen, who was on call, was already waiting for us at the entrance. He glanced at Marcus, then at me with a concerned expression, but remained silent. He simply gestured for a nurse to escort my grandson to an examination room. I followed, my feet feeling as heavy as concrete. When the nurse removed Marcus's thin sweatshirt, I nearly gasped aloud. Beyond the bruises on his face, his shoulders and forearms were covered in marks of brutality, purple and crimson bruises, like silent accusations. I stood there, motionless, gripping the edge of a supply table, containing the rage that was blazing within me. What did this monster do to you, I thought, but I didn't dare voice it aloud for fear that Marcus would start weeping again. Dr. Chen meticulously documented each injury, his expression grave. "We need to perform an X-ray to determine if he has any fractured ribs," he stated, his tone solemn but resolute. I nodded wordlessly, just observing Marcus lying there, his eyes closed as if attempting to escape reality. While I waited for the results, I went down to reception to complete his treatment forms and pay a deposit. My cell phone wouldn't stop buzzing. An unfamiliar number displayed on the screen. I recognized it instantly. If someone was calling at this hour, right after Marcus arrived at my door, it could only be Monica. Rage coursed through me, and I disconnected without even answering. She didn't deserve to speak with me, not after what she had done. When I returned to the room, Marcus had drifted into a light sleep, probably from sheer exhaustion. I pulled the blanket higher, my hands still trembling. Looking at his face, I remembered the Marcus from before, the cheerful young man who used to help me in the garden, calling out, "Grandma, watch this." Now that smile had vanished, replaced by wounds and fear. I sat by the bed, watching him sleep, my heart in fragments. I was his grandmother. I had promised to protect him, and I had allowed him to fall into the hands of a woman like Monica. I blamed myself, but simultaneously, a flame of determination began burning within me. I couldn't permit my grandson to continue suffering. Not ever again. After they started his Roman 4 and he was stabilized, I took Marcus home. I prepared him a mug of warm tea, left it by his bedside, and quietly closed the door, ensuring he was asleep. It was nearly dawn. A pale light filtered through the window. I stepped out to the balcony to tidy up a bit, and I saw Mr. Rodriguez, the neighbor from across the hall, sweeping his entryway. When he spotted me, he hurried over. His voice rushed. "Did something happen at your place last night, Mary?" I heard pounding on the door and some crying. I sighed and briefly explained that Marcus had been beaten by his wife, that she had thrown him out of the house, and he had to seek refuge here in the middle of the night. Mr. Rodriguez clenched his jaw, his eyes flashing. How dare she treat her husband like that? That woman has no decency. I nodded, saying nothing more, but I felt I had an ally. Suddenly, I remembered that Mr. Rodriguez had a security camera at his entrance. "Hey, Mr. Rodriguez, could your camera have captured anything last night?" I asked. He nodded immediately, opened the app on his phone, and showed me the footage. I recorded the scene on my phone. Marcus at my door, knocking desperately, his faint cries echoing through the night. Seeing that image made my heart ache all over again, but simultaneously, I knew it would be a crucial piece of evidence. I took Mr. Rodriguez's hand and thanked him from the depths of my soul. He simply patted my hand and said firmly, "Don't forget to secure justice for that boy. I trust you can accomplish it." I entered my bedroom, opened the closet, and looked at my lawyer's suit hanging impeccably, the charcoal blazer, the press slacks, the briefcase, and the leather portfolio. Everything seemed to be waiting for me. I took each piece, feeling the crisp fabric beneath my fingers. In silence, I dressed, fastening each button, adjusting the blazer. Each movement was like an oath. I wasn't only Marcus's grandmother, I was also an attorney, and I would utilize everything I possessed to protect him. When I finished, I picked up the phone and dialed Gregory Foster, the private investigator I'd worked with for years. His voice sounded groggy on the other end. "Hello." I was brief. "Gregory, execute the plan right now." He was silent for a moment, then asked, "Mary, are you certain?" I answered without a second of hesitation. "Completely." "Get ready." I hung up and went to the living room. I retrieved my digital camera from a drawer. I approached the bed where Marcus was sleeping, carefully removed the blanket, and began photographing each of his injuries. The bleeding nose, the swollen jaw, the bruise on his ribcage. Every time the flash went off, I felt I was not only documenting the physical wounds, but also the profound damage to his spirit. When I finished, I sat at the dining table and spread out all the documents and the USB drive with the footage from Mr. Rodriguez's apartment. I connected the drive to my laptop and meticulously backed everything up. Sitting there, watching the screen illuminate, I knew that from that moment forward, there was no turning back. I had entered a war not just for Marcus, but for the justice I had sworn to uphold. By the time I finished backing up the video from Mr. Rodriguez's camera, the clock read 9:00 in the morning. Marcus was still sound asleep in bed, his face swollen and his lips parched and cracked, as if he couldn't escape the pain even in his dreams. I quietly went into the kitchen and made a bowl of beef stew. The aroma of onions and spices filled the air. I brought the tray to his bed and woke him gently. He opened his eyes, his gaze exhausted, and was surprised to see me there dressed in my lawyer's suit. "Grandma," he murmured, then shook his head. "I'm not hungry." I sat beside him, trying to make my voice as gentle as possible. "To be strong and move forward, you must eat." Marcus looked at me, his eyes watery, and reluctantly took the spoon, swallowing with difficulty. Seeing him like this squeezed my heart. Just a few years ago, Marcus was a vibrant young man, always smiling, filling the apartment with joy. Now he was here, shattered, a shadow of his former self. I decided to take him back to the clinic for another examination. The bruise on his ribcage worried me. Dr. Raymond Chen received us in the urgent care area, his face serious but without saying much. He ordered a CT scan to ensure there was no internal bleeding. While we waited for the results, I sat in the waiting area, took out my laptop, and connected the USB drive. The video appeared on the screen. At 2:37 in the morning, Marcus was at my apartment door, knocking desperately, his muffled sobs echoing through the microphone. Seeing that image made my heart ache again, as if I were reliving that night. I copied the video to an external hard drive and password protected it, taking care of every detail. I knew what I was doing wasn't just to protect Marcus, but to construct a wall of evidence against Monica. Just then, Marcus's cell phone rang. The screen read Monica Brennan. I felt my heart stop. I grabbed the phone before Marcus could react and powered it off immediately. Marcus looked at me, terrified. "Grandma, if she discovers I talk, she won't leave me alone." His voice trembled as if the mere mention of her name plunged him into darkness. I squeezed his hand tightly, trying to calm him. "I'm here, sweetheart. Nothing will happen to you." But I said nothing more. I just glanced at the clock in silence. It was almost 11:00 in the morning. I removed the SIM card from Marcus's phone and inserted another one I had prepared. I didn't want her to locate him. I didn't want her to have the opportunity to threaten him again. The CT scan results came back a few minutes later, confirming that Marcus had several severe soft tissue contusions, but fortunately no internal bleeding. I let out a breath, but the relief was momentary. The wounds on Marcus's body would heal, but the ones in his soul I knew would require much more time. I took him home and called Gregory Foster, the investigator. I have the medical records and the footage from the neighbor's camera, I told him bluntly. He scheduled a meeting at his office in the afternoon to collect the evidence. Meanwhile, Mr. Rodriguez came over with a container of still warm beef stew. This is for Marcus to regain his strength, he said with his warm voice. If you need a witness, count on me. I looked at him, feeling his genuine support, and my heart felt a bit stronger. In the afternoon, Marcus tried to rest, but he would wake startled from nightmares. I sat by his side, trying to calm him, but he just mumbled fearfully. Monica shoved me, and Travis, he was in the corner laughing at me. Hearing that, I felt the blood rush to my head. Who is Travis? I asked, my voice shaking with rage. Marcus told me in a feeble voice that Travis was Monica's lover, that he had come to their house multiple times, shamelessly flaunting himself, provoking Monica to take it out on him. His story was like a knife in my heart. I had shared meals at the same table as Monica. I had believed she was a decent woman who would care for my grandson, and now it turned out she was not only betraying him, but letting another man humiliate him in his own home. Sitting by the bed, I took out my cell phone and took close-up pictures of the bruises on Marcus's forearms, including his wristwatch to show the exact time. With every picture I took, I felt I wasn't only documenting the physical wounds, but also the pain my grandson carried. I knew these photos would be evidence, but they were also a reminder of what I had to do to protect him. In the afternoon, I took Marcus to Gregory's office with a portfolio containing all the evidence. I had gathered the photos of the injuries, the medical report, and the video on the USB. Gregory opened it and laid everything on the table. The photos of the injuries, the medical report, and the video on the USB. Gregory nodded, his voice firm. This is a pretty solid foundation. Now we just need to prove the adultery publicly, and she'll have nowhere to run. I gripped the handle of my briefcase, knowing perfectly well what my next step was. I was no longer just a grieving grandmother. I was an attorney, and I would use everything I possessed to make Monica pay. That night, I didn't take Marcus to my apartment. I didn't want him to be in a place where Monica could find him. Instead, I left him at Mr. Rodriguez's apartment, my trusted neighbor. He opened his doors for him to stay the night and promised to keep a close watch on him. I returned home alone, my heart heavy. I removed my lawyer's suit and put on an old cardigan and slacks, trying to look like an ordinary person and not an attorney searching for evidence. I took the digital camera out of the drawer, checked the battery and memory card, and left in my sedan. Every turn of the tires reminded me that I was entering a war not just for Marcus, but for the justice I had sworn to uphold. I parked the car in a dim side street near Gatsby's Lounge, the place Marcus had told me Monica frequented. The neon light from the establishment illuminated a section of the street. I sat in the car, hunched down, camera in hand, waiting. Around 9:00 p.m., Monica's white SUV appeared, its headlights sweeping the alley. My heart raced, but I remained calm and turned on the camera. Ready? A few minutes later, a man emerged from around the corner. He was wearing a fitted black shirt, his hair slicked back, and a confident swagger in his step. I recognized him immediately. It was Travis Harmon, the man Marcus had told me about Monica's lover, the one who had made my grandson suffer. Monica turned off the engine, stepped out, and opened the door for Travis, wrapping her arm around his waist with familiarity. Seeing her, I felt my blood boil. She, the one who had sat down to eat in my home, the one who had called me Grandma Mary, was now embracing another man while my grandson was in a bed full of bruises. I snapped picture after picture. The neon light from the lounge clearly illuminated their faces. Each photo was like a stab, but also another piece in the puzzle I was assembling to unmask her. I followed them from a distance to a small motel with a flickering red light sign. I didn't approach, just stayed far away and took a couple more photos of them entering the lobby hand in hand. Then I circled around to the parking lot and took a picture of Monica's SUV license plate, ensuring a nearby digital clock showed the time. Each photo was a bullet, and I knew I had what would leave her with no escape. When I got home, I opened my laptop and transferred all the photos to a special password-protected folder. I called Gregory, the investigator, with a determination I couldn't hide. I have the photos of her infidelity. You can see their faces. You can see the vehicle's license plate. Gregory responded with a firm voice. Excellent, Mary. Keep them secure. Don't let her know you have them. I nodded, though he couldn't see me, feeling a bit more relieved, knowing I was one step closer to justice. Just then, my cell phone vibrated. It was Marcus calling from Mr. Rodriguez's number. His voice sounded distressed. Grandma, she just called a friend of mine asking where I am. When he told her he didn't know, she threatened him too. I'm so scared. Hearing Marcus, I felt my heart constrict. My grandson, even though he had escaped, was still tormented by her threats. I reassured him. You stay calm. Stay at Mr. Rodriguez's apartment. I have her under surveillance. But internally, I knew I had to act faster before she found a way to hurt Marcus again. I immediately contacted Lieutenant Barnes, a trusted colleague at the prosecutor's office. I presented him with all the evidence I had gathered, the video from Mr. Rodriguez, Marcus's medical history, and the photos of the infidelity. I need you to send someone to monitor the building, especially Mr. Rodriguez's apartment, I said, my voice hard. Barnes agreed without hesitation, but not without warning me first. Mary, what you're doing is very dangerous, but if you have sufficient evidence, I'm confident you'll prevail. I thanked him and gave him a copy of the infidelity photos in case something happened to me. That night, I couldn't sleep a wink. I sat at the dining table, organizing all the data into files, proof of the injuries, the camera footage, and the photos of the infidelity. Each file was like an accusation, one more step to bring Monica to light. But in my heart, I couldn't shake the pain. I had once considered her a granddaughter-in-law. I had believed she would protect Marcus. And now, not only had she betrayed him, but she had dared to raise a hand to him, to threaten him, all for another man. That pain, like a deep cut, hurt me every time I thought about Marcus's bruises. The next morning, I took Marcus to Dr. Helena Frost, a psychologist Gregory had recommended. Marcus needed help to overcome the trauma of the months of abuse. I stayed in the waiting room, my heart heavy, watching my grandson walk into the office. Walking slowly with his shoulders slumped was like a stone in my chest. I, who thought I was a strong grandmother, a tough attorney, had not been able to protect him from the woman I trusted. That pain, like a deep cut, hurt me every time I remembered Marcus's bruised face. While I was sitting there, my phone vibrated. It was Samuel Wright, the head of the county property records office, whom I knew from some previous cases. His voice sounded grave and a bit rushed. Mrs. Thornton, it's not wise to talk much on the phone, but I just saw your name and your grandson's on a property deed transfer file. Something strange. If you have time, you should come by. I frowned, not understanding what he was talking about. Marcus and I hadn't done any transfer paperwork, but a bad feeling made me get up immediately. I told Dr. Frost I would be back for Marcus later. When I arrived at the county records office, Samuel motioned for me to enter his office. He opened a file. Frowning, there's something strange here. This property was transferred to a Travis Harmon last week, but since you didn't call me to confirm, I found it odd. I froze. I felt my blood run cold. It can't be, I exclaimed. My voice choked. Marcus and I never signed anything. Samuel shook his head and handed me the file. The signatures are here with your name and your grandson's, and the transaction is already filed. I took the paper and saw shaky signatures that looked nothing like ours. I immediately asked, who came to deliver these papers? Samuel replied in a low voice. The clerk told me it was your grandson's wife, Monica. She said you had asked her to handle it because you were occupied with a case. Hearing that, I felt my blood boil. Monica had not only attacked Marcus, not only cheated on him, but she had dared to forge our signatures to steal the property, my late son's inheritance, what my family had cared for years. I tried to stay calm and asked Samuel for a photocopy of the file. He sighed. Someone from inside here surely helped her with the paperwork. Before I left, he whispered, Mary, this is dangerous. Be careful that no one in the office knows I told you. I nodded, thanked him, and promised not to betray him. But inside, I felt like I was walking on thin ice. Monica wasn't just a violent woman, she was a manipulator, willing to do anything to get her way. In the afternoon, I went to pick up Marcus from his therapy. He looked tired, but his gaze was no longer one of panic. I took him directly to Gregory Foster's office with the photocopy of the forged papers. Gregory reviewed them carefully, tapping the table with his fingers, and said firmly, "This is the final nail in the coffin. Now we also have proof of fraud enough for her to have no escape." Marcus, sitting next to me, listened in silence, but his eyes filled with tears. "Grandma, she dared to forge the signatures to steal Dad's property," he said with a trembling voice, both pained and indignant. I took his hand and squeezed it, trying to give him some strength, but I was also fighting my own pain. That property wasn't just real estate, it was a memory. It was my son's legacy, something our family had cared for generations, and Monica had dared to trample all over it just for her ambition and her betrayal. That night, I met with Lieutenant Barnes and gave him the copy of the fake papers. He nodded, his gaze serious. "Your evidence is very solid. I assure you, she won't get away." I thanked him, but I still had a weight on my heart. When I got home, I locked all the documents in the small safe in my bedroom. The clock showed almost 1:00 a.m., but I wasn't sleepy at all. I sat in the dark, thinking about Monica, about what she had done to Marcus, to our family. That pain, like a slow fire, burned and drove me at the same time. I knew the time had come to face her directly. There was no other option. On Wednesday morning, I left Marcus at Mr. Rodriguez's apartment, the safest place for him at that moment. Lieutenant Barnes had someone watching outside, and I knew he would be protected, but my heart was not at ease. I put on civilian clothes, an old cardigan and slacks, but I hid a file in my bag with the evidence I had carefully prepared. The photos of Marcus's injuries, the video from the neighbor's camera, the clinic report, and the photocopy of the fake property papers. I drove my sedan to Monica's real estate office, the place where she conducted her business and flaunted her power in town. Every turn of the tires reminded me that this wasn't a simple trip, but an inevitable confrontation. The office was open. A smell of fresh coffee and air conditioning hit me in the face. Two of Monica's associates were arranging documents on the desks and gave me a sideways glance when I entered. One of them smiled mockingly. "Look, the grandmother-in-law arrived." I ignored them and walked straight to the back office where Monica was sitting, reviewing contracts with stacks of legal documents piled on a glass desk. She looked up and gave a fake smile. "What's up, Grandma Mary? Are you so unoccupied that you have time to visit your granddaughter-in-law?" Her voice was loaded with sarcasm, but I paid her no mind. I hadn't come to argue or chat. I put the file on her desk. Each page was like an accusation, the photos of Marcus's bruises, the video from Mr. Rodriguez's camera with my grandson's cries in the early morning, the clinic report detailing his injuries, and the photocopy of the forged papers she had dared to sign for me and for Marcus. Monica glanced at them. Her face changed for an instant, but she quickly regained her air of confidence, hiding it with a contemptuous smile. "And what about these little papers? I have better lawyers than you." I looked her in the eyes, my voice cold. "I didn't come to argue with you. If you want to see who's right, we'll see each other in court." She jumped up, her voice restrained as if I had touched her pride. "Who's going to dare to touch me? Who's going to stand against me in this city?" I didn't flinch. I looked her straight in her arrogant eyes. "I will. Don't think everyone is afraid of you." The two associates at the entrance tried to approach, but I took my attorney's badge out of my jacket pocket and held it up. They stopped dead in their tracks, their gazes evasive. Monica turned red, slammed the table hard, and almost shouted, "Your grandson is pathetic. He deserved to be disciplined, and don't think that badge will always save you." Hearing that, I felt my blood boil. She dared to say that Marcus, my grandson, whom I loved more than my life, deserved to be disciplined. She dared to justify the bruises, the night Marcus had to flee in pain. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to lunge at her and grab her by the collar. But I held back. I didn't answer, just collected the file in silence, put it in my bag, and turned to leave. Before I left, I turned back and said firmly, "Just so you're clear, from now on, the rules of the game have changed. It's not you who's going to discipline anyone. It's the law that's going to discipline you." Monica shouted at my back, "If you walk out that door, you stop being my grandmother-in-law, and then don't complain if I get nasty." I stopped, looked at her one last time without a hint of fear. "Well, consider that from now on, you are no longer my grandson's wife." I went out into the street, where the wind was kicking up dust from the sidewalk. I got in the car and immediately called Gregory. It's time to file the lawsuit. Gregory replied, his voice calm but cautious. All right, get ready. She's going to counterattack with everything she's got. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. My heart as cold as steel. I knew this war wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. A few days after my confrontation with Monica at the real estate office, rumors started spreading through the neighborhood like wildfire. Early in the morning, I went to the farmer's market for some vegetables, trying to act normal, but the whispers reached my ears. Two ladies at the corner produce stand were whispering that Marcus probably made it all up. They say he was controlling with his wife, that's why she hit him. I walked past them and they fell silent, but their gazes followed me as if I were the one causing trouble. At the coffee shop next door, an elderly woman sipped her latte and shook her head. Mary is now using her law degree to screw over her granddaughter-in-law. Hearing that felt like a dagger in my chest. These people who greeted me every morning, who smiled at Marcus when he was a child, now so easily believed Monica's lies. I lowered my head and quickened my pace, trying not to let them see my eyes welling up with tears. At noon, Gregory called me to his office. He placed a stack of papers in front of me, his voice grave. Monica just hired Victoria Castellanos, a high-profile attorney from Chicago. She filed a counterclaim. She says Marcus made everything up to extort her, and that you're abusing your authority as an attorney. I took the lawsuit and saw Castellanos' signature in blue ink, still fresh. The words on the paper were like direct accusations against Marcus and me, as if we were the villains, the ones trying to ruin Monica's life. Marcus, sitting next to me, turned pale and said with a trembling voice, "Grandma, she wants to make me out to be a liar." Seeing him, I felt my heart clench. Marcus, my sweet grandson, now had to endure not only the bruises on his body, but also the slander of the woman he once loved. I took his hand and squeezed it, trying to give him some strength, but inside, I felt an indescribable pain. I had thought this city where I was born and raised would be on our side, but now it seemed the whole world was turning its back on us. In the afternoon, I took Marcus to Mr. Rodriguez's apartment. As we passed through an alley, I saw Monica's two associates standing there smoking, staring at us. One of them lifted her chin and said sarcastically, "Be careful. People around here believe Monica more than you." I didn't answer, just squeezed Marcus's hand and got him into the building. But those words were like stones thrown at my heart, making me feel more alone than ever. I immediately called Barnes to inform him of the threat. He promised to reinforce patrols at night, but his voice also sounded worried. "Mary, be careful. That woman is trying everything to turn the situation around." I nodded and thanked him, but inside, I knew I was walking a very dangerous path. That night, I went to the corner pharmacy to buy something for Marcus's pain. The pharmacist, an acquaintance of many years, took me to a corner and whispered, "Mary, be careful. People are saying all over that you made everything up to take the property from your granddaughter-in-law." Hearing that, a chill ran down my spine. The people who had been my neighbors, with whom I had shared stories, now believed I was a schemer. I thanked her, tried to smile, but as I left the pharmacy, I felt the world was caving in on me. When I got home, I found an unmarked envelope slipped under the door. Inside, a note in scribbled handwriting, "Shut up or you lose your grandson." I took the paper. My hands trembled, but not from fear. I was furious. Furious because Monica dared to threaten my grandson. Furious because the people around me were so easily manipulated. I carefully filed the note in the evidence file, knowing it would be another piece to unmask her. Late at night, I had an emergency meeting with Gregory at his office. He saw the threatening note and nodded slightly. "Good. The dirtier she plays, the more she tangles herself up. But public opinion is on her side. We need a strong blow to change things. And the only one who can do that is Travis." Hearing Gregory mention Travis, I felt a small light of hope ignite in the darkness. Travis, Monica's lover, could be the key to turning the situation around. But at the same time, I knew bringing him to our side wouldn't be easy. I stood there in the dim light of the office, thinking about Marcus, about the bruises on his body, about the lies that were suffocating us. That pain, like a slow fire, burned and drove me at the same time. I wasn't going to let Monica win. I wasn't going to let her lies hide the truth. The day after the tense confrontation at the real estate office, I found out that Travis used to frequent a small sports bar at the end of Oakwood Avenue. I knew it was my chance to change the course of the game, to turn the tables on the hand Monica thought she had won. I put on a nondescript jacket and a baseball cap, trying to go unnoticed. When I entered the place, classic rock music was blasting. Cigarette smoke hung in the air, and the smell of beer and fried food mixed in the atmosphere. I chose a booth in a dark corner, sat down, and kept my eyes on the door. I didn't want to be recognized. I didn't want any of Monica's people to see me before I could talk to Travis. Around 11:00 at night, he appeared in a fitted leather jacket, his hair slicked back, and a beer bottle in his hand. He walked with a confidence that seemed forced. I looked at him and felt a mix of anger and calculation. This was the man who had contributed to my grandson's suffering. But at the same time, I knew he was also just a pawn in Monica's game. I took a deep breath, got up, and sat across from him. Travis raised an eyebrow, his voice defensive. "And who are you?" I didn't answer right away, just placed an envelope on the table in silence. Inside was a copy of the fake property papers Monica had schemed, along with a bank statement for Travis full of accumulated debts and the risk of repossession. I looked him in the eyes and said sharply, "I'm Marcus's grandmother. If you stay on her side, you'll go down with her. But if you cooperate, you'll save yourself." Travis let out a mocking laugh, but it vanished from his face as soon as he opened the envelope and saw the papers. He turned pale. His gaze faltered as he saw the forged signature on the transfer and the red numbers of his debts. I continued in a cold but firm voice. "The district attorney already knows everything. As soon as the trial starts, you'll be called to testify for fraud, and you could even face serious charges. Is that what you want?" Travis was quiet for a long time. The hand holding his beer bottle was trembling. He downed his drink in one gulp, as if to give himself courage, and then said in a shaky voice, "Monica promised me she'd give me a share of the property. She said everything would be fine, that I would have it all. But now I understand she just used me." Hearing him, I felt a bit of pity. Travis, though misguided, was another victim of Monica's manipulation. But I didn't let my emotions get the best of me. I looked at him intently. "You have one last chance to get out of this clean. Tell the truth at the trial, I will take that into account." Just then, the bar door swung open and Monica's two associates walked in. They looked around, and their eyes locked on me sitting with Travis. They approached with unfriendly faces. Without hesitation, I took my attorney's badge out of my pocket and placed it on the table. "Want to try something? Go ahead." The dim light of the place shone on the badge, and the two women stopped, slowly backing towards the door, their eyes still full of hatred. Travis was breathing heavily, pale as a sheet, clinging to the edge of the table. I looked at him and said in a grave but determined voice, "Say, Monica can't protect you. She's only going to drag you down with her." Travis bit his lip, his eyes torn between fear and determination. Finally, he nodded. "Okay, I'll testify, but you have to promise me I'll be safe." I didn't promise much, I just nodded. "If you do the right thing, I'll do everything I can." I immediately called Barnes, told him the situation, and asked him to arrange a secure location on the outskirts for Travis to hide in. Leaving the bars, I walked down the cold, dark street, the wind making me shiver. But inside, I felt a great relief. I knew the battle had turned. Monica had just lost her most important piece. The morning of the trial, I woke up at 6:00 when the sky was still dim. I went to the kitchen and made a light oatmeal breakfast. The gentle aroma seemed to want to calm the tension that filled the apartment. I brought the tray to the bed where Marcus was still sleeping. Seeing him there, his face still a little swollen, and his jaw tender, squeezed my heart. I woke him gently, whispering, "Eat something, darling, so you'll have strength." Marcus opened his eyes, his gaze tired, but he nodded and sat up slowly. I helped him put on a crisp white shirt and khaki slacks and straightened his collar to give him confidence. I fixed his hair and said softly, "You don't have to hang your head anymore." Marcus looked at me, his eyes watery, but he didn't say anything, just took my hand, as if it were the only way to feel safe. Outside the apartment, Lieutenant Barnes was already waiting for us with an unmarked police car. He greeted me with a nod, his look serious but warm. "I've arranged protection, Mary. Everything will be fine today," he said. I thanked him, feeling a bit of relief knowing I wasn't alone. On the way to the courthouse, I saw the city's people gathered in the plaza, whispering. Some looked at us with curiosity, others nodded slightly as if in support, but there were also those who shook their heads with mistrust. The rumors Monica had spread still hung in the air, and I knew that today's battle wasn't just against her, but to reclaim the truth. Arriving at the courthouse entrance, I saw Monica. She was standing there in an impeccable navy suit, her face composed and her gaze sharp as a blade. Beside her, the attorney Castellanos seemed calm, but I knew she was tense. Travis was there too, standing far from Monica, his arms crossed and his gaze distant. Seeing him, I remembered the night at the bar when I convinced him to switch sides, and I felt a spark of hope. But I knew today wouldn't be easy. I took Marcus's hand and led him into the courtroom. Inside, the place was packed. The old wooden benches creaked as people settled in. I saw Mr. Rodriguez in the back row. He nodded at me encouragingly, as if to say he would always be there supporting us. Judge Patricia Reeves entered, and the whole room stood up. The air felt thick. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning, like the heartbeat of the room. Gregory Foster, my investigator turned legal consultant, began. His voice was deep and confident. He presented the case. Each piece of evidence was laid out before the court, the photos of Marcus's injuries, Dr. Chen's report detailing the lesions, the video from Mr. Rodriguez's camera that recorded Marcus's cries in the early morning, and the copy of the forged property papers that Samuel Wright had provided us. When Gregory projected the video on the screen, Marcus's knocks on the door and his faint sobs filled the room. I heard murmurs among the people. Some were wiping their eyes. I looked at Marcus beside me. His hands were shaking and his head was bowed. I put a hand on his shoulder and squeezed it gently, as if to tell him I was still there, that I would always be there. Attorney Castellanos rose to rebut. Her voice was sharp. Marcus invented everything to extort my client. Mary Thornton abused her authority as an attorney to coerce and slander. Those words were like daggers in my heart. I wanted to jump up, to scream that she was lying, that Marcus's bruises were not an invention. But Gregory signaled for me to calm down. He presented Monica's threatening messages, which were clearly visible on the big screen. Keep your mouth shut if you want to keep the house. The room fell silent. Marcus bowed his head. His hands trembled more violently, and I knew he was remembering the months he lived in fear. I squeezed his shoulder, trying to give him some of my strength. Then it was Travis's turn. He took the stand, trembling, his gaze hesitant. Monica promised to give me a share of the property, he said, his voice shaky but clear. She pressured me to accept the transfer papers, saying everything was arranged. But the truth is, she forged her husband's signature to steal the property from him. Monica jumped up, shouting, "You betrayed me." The court guards had to force her to sit down, while Judge Reeves said sternly, "Order, or I will have you removed from the courtroom." Travis bowed his head but continued to testify. Each word was like a hammer shattering Monica's lies. Seeing him, I felt a little relief, but I couldn't help the pain in my heart. Travis had been part of Marcus's suffering, but now he had chosen to be on the side of the truth. When it was my turn, I took the stand and swore before the court. I looked directly at the people, my voice firm. I am an attorney, but today I am here as a grandmother. I will not allow anyone, not even my grandson's wife, to destroy my grandson and mock the law. I pointed at Monica without a trace of fear in my eyes. That woman is not a wife. She is not a partner. She is just an abuser and a liar. The whole room murmured. Some of the people who had believed in Monica looked at each other, confused. I saw Mr. Rodriguez's gaze. He nodded as if telling me I had done the right thing. Finally, Judge Reeves stood up to read the verdict. Her voice was grave and clear, but I didn't hear every word. I only knew that she issued a protection order for Marcus, froze all of Monica's assets, nullified the property transfer, and sent the case to the state attorney's office to investigate the crimes of fraud and domestic violence. A roar of murmurs filled the room. Monica slumped in her chair, her face pale, as if all her strength had vanished. Castellanos remained silent, taking off her glasses to wipe away the sweat. I took Marcus's hand and led him out of there. The midday sun shone brightly on the courthouse steps, and I heard people whispering, "Mary won. Justice won." But inside, I knew that this victory did not erase the wounds Marcus had suffered. I only hoped that from this day on, he could begin to find his smile again. The afternoon of the trial, when Judge Patricia Reeves finished reading the verdict, the courtroom erupted in murmurs. I didn't hear every one of her words, but when I saw Monica collapse in her chair, her face pale, I knew we had won. The ruling dictated a protection order for Marcus, froze Monica's assets, nullified the fraudulent property transfer, and sent the case to the state attorney's office to investigate the crimes of domestic violence and fraud. When I took Marcus's hand and we left the courthouse, the midday sun was shining on the steps, and I heard people whisper, "Mary won. Justice won." But inside, I didn't feel victorious, I just felt relief, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. But the pain was still there, like a scar that would never fully heal. That same afternoon, the police went to Monica's real estate office to arrest her. People crowded the street to watch. Some whistled at her, others shouted insults to her face. I wasn't there, but the next morning, when the local newspaper published a photo of Monica in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs under the headline "Real Estate Agent, Arrested for Violence and Property Fraud," I felt something strange. It wasn't joy, it was a kind of liberation. She who had sat at my table, who had called me Grandma Mary, was now paying for what she had done. But that feeling was quickly replaced by sadness. I had trusted her. I had thought she would take care of Marcus. The pain of being betrayed by a family member, like a slow burn, still seared inside me. Travis disappeared from the city a few days after the trial. It was rumored he had gone to Phoenix to look for work, to start over. I didn't blame him. He had been part of Marcus's pain, but in the end, he had chosen the truth. Monica's two associates, the ones who called themselves her loyal team, were also questioned for witness tampering. The neighborhood suddenly felt calmer. There were no more hateful glares or silent threats. But I knew that the wounds Monica had left on Marcus and me wouldn't disappear so easily. Marcus moved in with me permanently. The first few days, he could barely sleep. He would wake up startled every night, sweating, screaming, "Grandma, she's coming." In those moments, I would sit by his side, take his hand, and whisper, "It's okay, darling. You're safe now." But seeing Marcus like that, I saw myself years ago when my son had passed, and I had to stay strong alone. I took him to Dr. Helena Frost, the psychologist, every week without fail. Dr. Frost listened to Marcus with patience, helping him face his nightmares step by step. After a few weeks, I started to notice a change. Marcus no longer avoided eye contact when he went out. He no longer hung his head when he walked through the farmer's market. One afternoon, I found him in the kitchen making pasta, and as he stirred the sauce, he hummed softly. That tune, as gentle as the wind, brought tears to my eyes. It had been so long since I had heard my grandson hum. It was as if the sun was starting to enter the apartment again. The city also began to change its attitude. The neighbors who had doubted, who had believed Monica's rumors, now greeted me. Some came up to apologize with regret in their voices. "Mrs. Thornton, we didn't know the truth." I just nodded without resentment. I understood that Monica's lies had been convincing, and not everyone has the courage to stand up to someone like her. Mr. Rodriguez came to visit with a tray of homemade cookies, and he hugged Marcus tightly. "You turned out stronger than I expected." Seeing them laugh together warmed my heart, as if people's kindness still existed despite the dark days. I continued my work at the law firm. Every case was a reminder of my duty. Every time I encountered a case of domestic violence, I felt more determined to help other men and women break the silence. Once, I found a young man crying outside the courthouse, his eyes red, clutching his backpack. I sat next to him and said in a soft voice, "You're not alone. My grandson lived it, and I too stayed silent once. But today, I know that silence only feeds the monster." The young man looked at me, the tears still streaming, but there was a new glint in his eyes. I knew I couldn't erase his pain, but at least I could show him that someone was willing to listen. A few months later, Marcus felt strong enough to go back to work. He got a job in a financial consulting firm downtown. That night, he came home late, opening the door with a radiant smile. "Grandma, I got the position." I stood up and hugged him with all my might, and we both cried. They weren't tears of pain but of joy, of liberation. Seeing Marcus there, smiling like the sun, reminded me of the young man who used to help me in the garden, calling out, "Grandma, watch this." I knew the wounds in his heart were still there, but he was learning to move on, to find himself again. That night, I sat on the balcony. The wind was blowing coolly. I remembered the night Marcus collapsed at my door, his face covered in bruises, telling me in a trembling voice what Monica had done to him. I remembered the months of struggle, the sleepless nights, the moments I thought I would break under the lies and mistrust of the entire city. But then I looked at Marcus's smile today, and I thought, justice is sometimes slow, but when it comes, it can give you back your breath, your laughter, and even your future. I took a sip of my tea. It was cold now, but I felt a peace in my heart that I hadn't felt in a long time. Marcus had come back, and though he carried the scars of the past, he had found a reason to keep fighting not just for himself, but to show others that there is always a way forward. The story we tell is fictional, but it is based on some real events. The names and places have been changed to protect the identities of those involved. We don't tell this to judge, but in the hope that someone will listen and stop to think. How many men and women are suffering in silence inside their own homes? I'm genuinely curious. If it were you in my place, what would you do? Would you choose to be silent to keep the peace? Or would you dare to face it all to get your voice back? I want to know what you think, because every story is a candle that can light someone else's path. God always blesses, and I firmly believe that courage leads us to better days. Meanwhile, on the end screen, I leave you with two of the channel's most beloved stories. I assure you they will surprise you. Thank you for staying until the end.